Good evening and welcome to the broadcast of the Enid City Commission from the council chambers in the administration building on West Garriott.
Doesn't sound right. Let's call the meeting to order. Have a little housekeeping item first. And that is, I would like to remind our citizens that the City Commission meeting is live streaming on your computer or your mobile devices tonight, the first time. Go to www.enidtv.org and you can watch the live streaming of our meeting on your phone or your computer. That being said, we will get started. Our invocation this evening will be given by Dr. Greg Hook. He is with the Garland Road Baptist Church. And our flag salute this evening. Chris, would you like to give us the flag salute after invocation, please? Dr. Hook, thank you for being here.
I'm reminded as we gather here of all the holidays and wonderful times to celebrate, but also that idea of expectation and waiting, like Advent or little child waiting for Christmas. And so let's remember that as we pray. Lord, we thank you that we get to celebrate everything that you've given us and that you give us every good and perfect gift. But Lord, we're also mindful that there's so many things that we wait for, and like waiting for tests from the doctors or waiting for something to happen or a big project to occur. Lord, we want to be people who look to you with eager expectation and with prayers, knowing that you hear our prayers. And so, Lord, we even ask now that you'd bless this city council as they meet together and our city with all the hopes and dreams that we have, that we might look to you for vision and direction. But it might be like a season of Advent, of eager expectation and waiting for all the good things you give us. Now pour your blessings out on our fair city and our council and our mayor and the leaders of each department. Show your favor, I ask, in Christ's name, amen.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, consider approval of minutes.
Motion to approve.
At the regular commission meeting of November the 18th. Motion by Ron,
Second.
by Rodney. Please cast your vote. Go back to item 1. Linda, we're all here. All accounted for. Item 5, awards, presentations, proclamations, and organizational business. Item 1, present the pet available for adoption at the city animal shelter.
Pet tonight? There he is. He is. That's a pretty good-sized dog.
Aye, good.
Good evening. My name is Officer Jared Free with Enid Animal Control. With me, I have a dog that I just named Rowdy. It's been kind of rowdy sitting in one spot for the past 15 minutes, but great dog. He is a red heeler and Australian Shepherd mix. In the past, I've talked about people with cattle that probably need a dog. This would be a great dog, smart dog, probably about 6 months old. Really help out with cattle. So we do have other animals in the shelter. We would like for people to come out, take a look, get more people coming in, more people spreading the word for adoptions. I appreciate y'all for my time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any proclamations or organizational business. Item 6, hearings. Item number 1, under item 6, conduct a public hearing pursuant to Title 3, Chapter 8, Article A, Section 3-8A-3 of the Enid Municipal Code 2014 on the application of Miller EMS LLC's application to operate an ambulance service within the city of Enid. Andrea?
Mayor, Commissioners, you should have received the application via email. I've answered any questions that have come to me via email, and I believe that Mr. Matt Miller is going to be here tonight to present his qualifications to you.
Andrew, before you start, I want to clear up a couple items here. Folks, the number of you signed up to speak, but you didn't write down the agenda item number. You wrote down Life EMS, and in one case, Mr. Calgar, you didn't mention anything. So we have a hearing, and we also have an item at 8.4. Unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to presume you wish to speak at item 8.4, which is the actual commission decision. Am I wrong about that? If you wish to speak at the hearing portion, then I need to know that now. Okay?
Is that part of public discussion?
No, it's on the hearing portion, 6.1.
That they have to sign in for the hearing.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm confused, Mr. Mayor, is because they just put down, in some cases, ambulance service and Life EMS.
Okay.
And it's in two different spots on the agenda.
I understand.
All right, so Bryce Kennedy and Mr. Johnson, I have you down for, I'm sorry, sir. And you wanted this in the hearing portion, okay. All right, I think I got it straight, fellas. Okay. Bryce, does that apply to you? Yes. I got you, Mike. Okay, I think we're good, Mr. Mayor.
You need to put Mike on.
Yeah, he's on here at 8.4.
Mike, did you say in the hearing?
Andrew, is it still okay to ask her questions?
Pardon me?
Is it okay to ask Andrew a question? Sure. Could you just outline for us exactly what the council's responsibility is with regards to the ambulance in terms of what it is we need to consider as far as our decision on approving the license? I know you kind of put it in an email, but if you would outline that again, I think it'd be helpful.
I will. I'm going to pull up, I have the ordinance up on my iPad. These are the items that you are to consider. The number of ambulances in operation, the possible effect on traffic if additional permits were to be issued, the quality of ambulance service in Enid, any other factors affecting public convenience and necessity, and then you are also able to consider any items that are brought before you by the persons who speak tonight. So there are certain elements that are required by the ordinance to be considered, but you can consider any information that's also brought to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any other questions before I turn it over to Mr. Miller?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thanks for having me tonight. My name is Matt Miller. I'm the owner and director of Miller EMS. We are a limited liability company with the Oklahoma Secretary of State. I am the sole owner and the chief operating officer of the company. We're based in Medford, Oklahoma. That's where our headquarters is at. We were established in the state of Oklahoma as an emergency medical service in 2006. And then in 2008, we began providing actual ambulance service, transport services. My company has experience in both the 911 and interfacility transfer aspects of EMS. We are the 911 provider for 3 towns in Grant County. We are also covering 2 towns in Kansas. And we are the provider of paramedic life support to the city of Medford's ambulance service pursuant to an agreement that was established over a year ago. In addition to 911 service, we also provide interfacility transfers, which is hospital-to-hospital transfers. Things that would be going, or patients that would be going from Enid, Oklahoma City, Enid to Wichita. We also provide interfacility transport service in the Tulsa metropolitan area. We have an ambulance base in Owasso, Oklahoma, and we also, in addition to transfers over there, we provide a 911 backup to several ambulance services in that area within the Tulsa metropolitan area. Our annual call volume right now sits at about 3,500 calls a year. That is system-wide, all the areas we cover, all taken into account. These calls are processed through our very own dispatch center with certified emergency medical dispatchers. We facilitate delivery of our service with use of 8 ambulance units and approximately 50 personnel, dispatchers, paramedics, EMTs, office staff, all included in that number. I've submitted an application to the City of Enid to become an ambulance provider here in Enid. My proposal is for an ambulance staff 24 hours a day at the paramedic life support level. There were some questions regarding our licensure level. We are licensed at the basic level with the state of Oklahoma. But we do operate paramedics on each of our regularly scheduled ambulances under what they call individual protocols. So they are operating, all of our ambulances are operating to the paramedic level. I'm requesting that the Enid 911 Communications Center alternate 911 calls between the 2 services if granted a license to operate here in the city of Enid. I would request that 911 calls are alternated between the 2 of us. And additionally, in addition to that, I would also like to handle interfacility transfers, as we already are, out of both hospitals here in Enid on a fairly regular basis now. However, those calls would be up to the facility to determine who they want to call, myself or the other local provider here. My decision to submit an application to the City of Enid for a license here in town came after about 2 years of familiarization with the City of Enid and with the City of Enid's provider. And therefore, I feel like, based on my findings, that there is an opportunity here for my company, a business opportunity, but also an opportunity for us to be involved in providing a supplemental ambulance service to the citizens of Enid. And with that said, I would like to stress supplemental service. My intention is not to push out my clash with or otherwise displace your current provider. I think that that would be a very bad thing for the citizens. With that said, I do believe that the two of us can coexist here in the city and provide excellent care to the citizens. I urge the City Commission tonight to use solid facts regarding the pros and cons of this proposal in the decision you make. With that said, are there any questions or anything I can clarify for you all?
We can, sure.
How many ambulances would you put in Enid?
Right now, the proposal is for one full-time ambulance, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, staffed at the paramedic level. That's not to say that we wouldn't supply additional ambulances depending on call volume. If we were having a busy day, we could send another unit in from our headquarters in Medford.
Would you establish an office in Enid?
Absolutely. We would establish a base station here that would be staffed 24 hours a day, would be the crew quarters and the housing for the ambulance.
You say you would have one unit?
Yes, the proposal is for one unit. I know that we can provide one paramedic level ambulance 24 hours a day. Any additional units would be based strictly off call volume.
Anyone?
If I may, what can you tell us about your equipment? The age of your equipment and the qualifications of your staff and so on?
Okay. As far as our equipment, the equipment we use to provide patient care is all modern, up-to-date equipment. Our cardiac monitors, defibrillators are Philips MRX brand, which we call them fully loaded. They've got all the bells and whistles, pulse oximetry, blood pressure, end-tidal CO2. Commissioner Van Hooser's probably very familiar with all this stuff. As far as what our staff is able to do on our ambulances, our protocols are probably some of the more advanced in the state. We provide advanced level airway, rapid sequence intubation for one. That's where we can actually, if you're having a severe problem breathing, we can sedate you and place a breathing tube to assist your respiratory status. We have all the advanced cardiac drugs, pain medications. Pretty much if you can put it on an ambulance, it's probably on one of ours. So.
You mentioned in your information that you provided that the three vehicles were 20 to 25 years old. I know the equipment probably is inside an old vehicle, but
Well,
those three seem
the oldest truck we have is probably 20-some years old. It is a backup unit.
And you said you had 8 vehicles,
We have 8 vehicles altogether system-wide.
system-wide?
System-wide.
How many would that be for Enid? Just
Well, we have 3 units based in Medford. We have another one 15 miles north in Caldwell. So as of right now, yes, only 1 unit would be allocated for Enid. And as I stated before, any additional units would be strictly based off of call volume.
Right now, you're averaging 10 calls a day.
Yeah, just under 10 a day.
You have listed 3 vehicles.
Yes. What I did on the application, I listed all the vehicles we have currently stationed at our Medford base. The purpose for that is so that if we need to swap units, move one in and out of the city of Enid, we would have those all listed on the application so they could all be licensed for operation in the city of Enid.
Have you determined which of these 3 you would bring to Enid?
Yes, we have determined that. And I don't know how they're listed on your agenda there or your information there, but we do have a determination on which one is coming here.
Is it the 92, the 96, or the 97 model?
It'd be the 97.
Which is 17 years old.
Correct.
I've been visiting with a couple of people about how the calls will be distributed. you'd probably not realize it, I don't for sure how many Life has, that's my ignorance there. Let's say they had 3 or 4, I wouldn't think you would, how would you think that would be distributed as far as calls?
And
As far as every other one, you couldn't be, to me, you wouldn't be every other one where they,
correct. If Life EMS is running 2 ambulances and we're running 1, I think the calls should be distributed in such a manner. If we're running 1, they're running 2. They have a better ability to answer those calls than we would. So maybe every 3rd call.
plus we have a problem with if you're transferring from hospital to hospital.
Correct.
You'd have to have 911 telling that you're busy so we don't have to delay a call
Correct. That would
ahead of time.
At that point in time, that call would forward to Life EMS.
But that would also change Life's system too, because they would need to tell, we've got problems here. Having 2 services, you almost have to know ahead of time who's busy before an accident would happen. I just want you to know that to me, you wouldn't be every other call.
Correct.
Just with one.
Yeah, I understand that.
How would you handle a huge accident, like multiple automobile accident, trucks involved, chemical spills, things like that?
Just as we do right now, we call for mutual aid if we need it.
Call
For mutual aid, additional ambulances from other services.
Brian, we're handling emergency calls for Grant County at this point, is that correct? No, Major County. I'm sorry, I get those 2 confused. So they don't have any dealing with us now anyway. Okay, we should go get Grant County too.
Further questions?
There are additional folks who wish to speak, Mr. Mayor. If you'll approach the mic and state your name and your address when I call your name. Jimmy Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Jimmy Johnson, President of Life EMS in Enid. I've been in operation for 45 years, I believe. If I have any regrets along the way, I told Commissioner Brownlee this yesterday, it's that I've always been a philosophy, you do your job and do it well and do it right, the right people will know and everything will be okay. That's probably the wrong philosophy to have, and I should do more to communicate what we do out into the public. There is a reason that we're able to respond to all citizens of Enid, regardless of ability to pay, and that's because we have had a protected area to be able to operate in, and so we take the good with the bad. I firmly believe that by allowing another operation to participate in Enid is going to dilute it to the point that it could jeopardize both of us. And in reference to, I heard equipment seemed to be a topic, and we have 10 ambulances, 8 of which are no older than 2010, 3 of which are brand new, the one 0 to 3,000 miles. So we firmly believe that keeping the equipment to the state of the art and up to date is important for not only us but the citizens of Enid. I'll field any questions that you might have.
Are you currently able to respond to all of the calls that you receive in a timely manner?
We are, Commissioner Jansen, we're not required by this ordinance, but we hold ourselves to a standard, the national standard, that we do our best to respond to every call within 8 minutes and 59 seconds, 90% of the time, which is a national standard. There are some cities that it's gone even higher, up to 10 minutes and 59 seconds. And those records are available. I'd be happy to share them with you at any point you want to look at them.
this many ambulances, you have enough people to staff that many ambulances?
We, as everyone else, have been hit with the oil and gas industry. I've lost 5 key members of my staff to the oil and gas industry, but our objective is to get to have three ambulances staffed per day, 2 at night.
So the 8, 10 kind of is not really legit then?
I'm sorry?
The 8 to 10 ambulances aren't really legit then?
Well, they're not running that many all at once.
Well, they're legitimate. We just don't staff them 24 hours a day, no.
Jim, how are your calls tied in with the fire department? I see where they make a lot of calls that I assume you're not making those calls.
The fire department it runs on first response with us. In fact, we started a new program today, and we have our dispatch center is priority dispatch, and it is when we dispatch a call, if it could be a priority 1, priority 2, or priority 3, and anything that is below a priority 1, which is life-threatening, we don't run lights and siren, meaning that we don't pass through protected speed or protected lights. We abide by the speed limits, and we're doing actually training with Joe's people today, tomorrow, and the next day on how we're doing the priority 2, so that we can notify them and they can take theirs down to that level 2. That way we don't put the public and our own people in jeopardy.
Are you telling me you cooperate well with the fire department?
Joe? Yeah, very, very much so.
That's all I want to hear.
Is there
Very much so.
Mr. Miller mentioned different licenses. Is there different levels of licensing you have?
We have a paramedic license.
What does that mean?
Well, whatever license you're licensed at, you have to respond with, at that level, 90% of the calls that you run. You can choose to lower the level of your licensure, and therefore, a lot of services lower the level and then have paramedic individual protocols, meaning if you've got a few paramedics on and you could staff it with that, then you could run at a paramedic level. If you don't have that paramedic on, you're within the rules of the state of Oklahoma to run at a basic level. We're a paramedic level licensure.
Have you had situations occur where you didn't have enough ambulances to handle a call, an accident of some kind, and had to call on someone else to assist?
Well, we've had, we could have 5 ambulances, Commissioner Jansen, and there would be a time when you might not have enough. So yes, we have had instances where we didn't have enough crews. We also have the ambulance service in Hennessy, and so when we get really busy, if it's critical to a critical stage, we'll post that ambulance closer to Enid, so that they can. It's a system status management situation where they can come and help if we need them.
So you've got your ambulances plus them, and then if that's not enough, who would you go to next?
Well, just as Mr. Miller said, we would do a mutual aid situation.
Normally, who would respond to that?
Well, first of all, Hennessy would be our first mutual aid. If you, at some point where it gets at critical stage, we start calling employees in from off duty.
Do you cooperate with Vance?
We cover Vance.
And vice versa.
We cover Vance Air Force Base and the flight line for flight line emergencies.
Okay.
Have for, I don't know.
What does cover mean, Jim?
Mr. Mayor, what?
What does cover mean?
We respond to anything, any need that they have out there.
Does that work both ways, if you need their help?
If we needed, they divested themselves of their ambulances about 10 or 12 years ago, and we have a cooperative understanding with them, an agreement with them that we will respond to them. And unlike most communities, we felt like that was our community partner responsibility, so we don't charge the federal government for doing that. There are other communities that do, we don't.
What are your charges? I'm sitting here looking at Mr. Miller's application and a schedule of charges, and maybe this is a standard schedule, maybe it isn't. What's the kind of brief rundown on your?
Our rates are considerably lower than Mr. Miller's, and I'm going to defer to one of my billing clerks to tell me because off the top of my head. Our non-emergency transports are $350. Our ALS emergency is $750, and our mileage is $12 a mile.
Explain ALS.
Advanced life support.
Okay. Too many acronyms.
I'm sorry.
Too many
And Mr.
acronyms.
Mayor, I despise acronyms as well. That really bothers me.
I don't despise them, I just don't understand what all of them are. Anyone else?
Bryce Kennedy.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
My name is Bryce Kennedy. Welcome. It's nice to be here again. I'm representing Life in this application, and of course, Life has a part in this application. As part of the criteria you're supposed to consider is the number of ambulances in operation, the possible effect upon traffic of additional permits, the quality of ambulance service in Enid. So considering what you have is part of the consideration under this item. Emergency services is an essential city service. Now, the city of Enid has chosen to have a licensing procedure in its ordinance. And for 45 years, it has had one service. You are lucky in that you do that. Most communities, even communities your size, they have to provide those services themselves. And they do it at considerable public investment, either transfers from your sales tax or from your water or from your sewer, or they rely on a 3% millage from the county, and those dollars are transferred. So the situation that you have is very enviable. It's an essential service. I would put it right up there with police, fire, 911, and ambulance. It's one of the essential ones, and I want to make sure that the council understands its responsibility. Its responsibility there to ensure that that service is properly carried out in the community. Now, I'm not saying legal liability, but I am talking about purpose liability. It is the purpose of the government to ensure that the public have these essential services and they're provided in a way that the residents are protected. You know, your purpose is the health, safety, welfare of the residents, and that's of course the police power. Now, the first thing that I'd like to say, and I'm somewhat embarrassed because I was city attorney here from 81 to 95, and your ordinance is a train wreck. The ordinance under which you regulate ambulances is a train wreck, okay? And I have to apologize because for 14 of those years, I was your legal counsel, but we never had this issue come up. Okay, this issue never came up. And as you know, city government is, it's based on issues. Those issues get thrown at you really, really fast. Just point up a couple things about your ordinance. One is that your insurance requirements, if you kill somebody, you only require the ambulance service to put up $100,000 in insurance. And if you kill a bus full of nuns, it's $300,000. I mean, those limits are low. But you can say, well, okay, you got it in the insurance. what the ordinance talks about is chauffeurs and attendants, okay? Which language is literally, well, 45 years old, which is about the age of this ordinance. This ordinance actually came into effect that the funeral homes and hospitals were running, you know, the service. This ordinance got passed, and then you had your first ambulance service, and that was Jim Fulmer. And Jim Fulmer went on in places in the state of Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Housing Authority, a very good guy. And Jimmy Johnson became the next provider. But under your ordinance, they're not called EMTs and paramedics. They're called chauffeurs and attendants. And the requirements that they need to have is to be an attendant, you have to have a certificate of advanced Red Cross first aid, or a U.S. Bureau of Mines certificate. Now, that may have worked 45 years ago, okay? But, you know, now we're talking about paramedic training, EMS training, other training, all authorized by the Department of Health. You know, I'm a municipal attorney. That's all I do. And I represent cities around here. You know, the first thing that I would do, looking at this as a municipal attorney, is you need different regulations. Okay, you need different regulations, and they should be applicable to Jimmy Johnson in life emergency. And they should really set out, you know, what you intend. You talked about a response time. You know, you can provide for that in your rule. You can talk about the level of care that you require. You know, a paramedic level of care versus the level of care that's been submitted by the applicant is a different level of care. I'm a lawyer. I'll let a doctor speak to that, and that would be a medical director, Dr. Ogle, who's not only the medical director for life, he's the medical director for more than a score of other agencies. So the first thing that I would say, if I was representing you, is that you need to take a look at this ordinance. And you need to correct this ordinance. And you need to put into it the types of things that you need to have to ensure that health, safety, and welfare of the public, because that's critical. EMS is a city function, which is regulated by you and is delegated, you know, by way of a regulation to someone. But just point out, if the city conducted EMS service, and it was your service, certainly you wouldn't look at other folks coming into the area. You would think that your service is tight with vans, tight with the fire department, and is working. Now that is one of the criteria that you're supposed to be looking at, and that is, how is it working? Whether that can be detailed, you know, at this public hearing by a lawyer getting up and speaking, or a medical director getting up and speaking, or even, you know, somebody with more of a reputation, more experience, whether that could be detailed at this public hearing. You know, I would suggest write a good regulation with some study, take a look at your community, take a look at needs, come out with a regulation, and let everybody apply. Under that regulation, you might be able to elevate service. You might be able to get more participation. I believe, in looking at the state, there's only a couple communities that have two services. One is Medford and one is Lawton, and they do have two services. Otherwise, ambulance service is normally a losing proposition. It's something that you've got to fund money into. It's a tenuous thing. Let me tell you what you don't want. You don't want him to leave, okay? You don't want to take it over. You don't want it to come back to you, I don't believe, unless the fire department, you know, has an interest there. And what Jimmy is saying is that that's a possibility. If that is a possibility, that he may no longer be able to serve because of this competition, that's something that the board needs to consider. You know, I detailed some things in a possible ordinance: require paramedic level service, performance standards, nature and time for response, detailed inventory of ambulance, what you require, newer ambulances, there are all kinds of different types of ambulances. What kind of ambulances do you want? More important, detailed financial records showing the financial capacity of the applicant to meet the level of service and the use in the community. I mean,
Well, Bryce, I hate to interrupt you. I think we all recognize that our ordinance is woefully inadequate, and we won't hold, you responsible for that.
There's a way to solve that.
But we can fix that, and we should. We need to revise this ordinance. We need to provide a minimum set of standards.
I've already
But
started
that isn't
working on it.
particularly, and we appreciate that Mr. Miller brought this to our attention and that you've given us some additional details. But that's not really what we're here for tonight. I'm not sure that we need to be approving or adding or changing our ambulance without rewriting an ordinance first. But the fact that our ordinance is lousy isn't why we're here.
that is correct, but you have an application, you have an application that's been made against, with an ordinance that's woefully inadequate. And therefore, my recommendation would be to grant a moratorium, a limited moratorium, limited in time, limited in duration, limited in scope, on the issuance of licenses pursuant to the ordinance. Do the study, eliminate the moratorium, then open it back up. I mean, issuing a permit or a license under this ordinance, I believe that you have the power to do it. Certainly you have the power to do it. I don't know that you can meet the criteria, that's set out there. There's a whole lot of criteria that you've got on the big board that you're supposed to consider. But if you think that there has been a valid explanation of that criteria and that you've heard all you need to hear, well, then of course you can issue the license. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Bryce.
Mike Ogle. And again, if you would, just identify yourself and give us your address for the.
My address?
Yeah, that's
Dr. Michael Ogle, 3002 Oak Leaf Circle. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. It's kind of nice to see Dr. V out of scrubs. I do have some orange pocket squares if you need to borrow some. It's always hard to follow the attorney up here because they've said most everything I wanted to say. I come to you today wearing 3 hats. I'm a citizen of this community, a long time, enjoy being a citizen here. What happens to me, my family, my neighbors, my friends is important, and the ambulance service is part of that. I also come as a medical director for 23 ambulance services. 2 that matter to you are Life EMS, and the other is Vance Air Force Base. So I am involved in that coordination with the base. And lastly, I'm a medical director of an emergency room here in town for 22, 23 years. So this whole issue concerned me when I first heard about it, and I read your ordinance. And train wreck is not a term I normally use in medicine when I'm discussing something, because that kind of hits home with me, but the ordinance is a little bit of a mess. And my recommendation, the reason I came partly tonight to say I would like to see the ordinance fixed first before we discuss changes in the current service and how we provide services needed. These people back here, these paramedics, medics, EMTs, emergency medical technician, that's EMT, they work under my license. And it's important that they have the capability and the services to do that, because my license is in the line every time they went through the door. That's my license that goes with them. So it's important to me that this is done right. So I implore you at this point, look at your ordinance before you make your next decision. Again, everything else was taken from me. I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Steve Athey. Mr. Athey, if you would, for our ADA requirements, if you would state your name and your address.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. My name is Stephen Athey, and I am from 201 Morning Dove Court in Argyle, Texas. I drove all the way up here to be with you today, and I appreciate your time. I was told I had 3 minutes, and I see nobody's got a stopwatch. I'm going to try to stay about 3, but feel free to yell at me if you need to, and I'll stop.
You got some incorrect information.
Oh, excellent, okay. Well, like I said, I'm an EMS consultant, and I own and operate my own consulting firm, Healthcare Visions, which operates in North America. I work for cities and counties and hospital districts and taxing districts, private ambulance companies and fire departments all across this nation and in Canada. And I've had an opportunity to see the effects of bad system design. And I understand tonight you're going to, you have a decision to make as to whether or not to allow another license into this service area. And I'm here to encourage you, strongly encourage you not to do so. It seems like a simple request. It seems like, what harm could it possibly do to let somebody else in to run a call or two? But I can promise you this is not a simple request, and the ramifications of allowing another provider in an already existing system will have huge ramifications, and many of them will be negative. I'm sure Mr. Miller saw a business opportunity, but I have to tell you this is not a business decision. This is in fact an EMS system decision of which you are responsible to make sure stays whole. You should never dilute the market area with multiple providers unless you have a significant and irreparable need. It is just too severe to do. It causes too many issues when you in fact make that decision without there being a need. I will tell you that in the EMS system design world, in the consulting world, we almost never see an opportunity where fragmenting is better. It's always consolidation that makes systems better. And I will tell you, when I get hired by commissions and councils such as yours to come into an area to see if there's a need for additional services or a change in services, there's some pretty standard things that I and other consultants look at. We look at response time compliance. Are there horrible response times in an area? Are there a large number of long responses where citizens are waiting and waiting for an ambulance? Is there a provider that can't keep staffing and therefore his ambulances come to a critical low level at times? Are there multiple and increasing customer complaints? Or is your provider standing up here before you asking for a subsidy? I don't believe any of that is happening in this area. And in fact, what you have is every ambulance that rolls out the door at Life EMS is staffed with a paramedic. You get the highest level of pre-hospital care that can be offered you in the United States today. You get it at a national level response time. Cities like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Arlington, Fort Worth have the same response time standards that you're getting the performance at. And it costs you as a city $0. I want to say that again. You and the citizen taxpayers get that level of service and have for decades. You get it at $0. And I'm here to tell you, any change in that puts this system at risk and puts all of that at risk. It is a very fragile industry. I have clients all over the country that are struggling with decreasing revenues, Medicare issues that are going down, cost of service going up. Everybody now in my business looks at what is your cash per transport? Because if you looked at a trend line, it's going down and down and down. I don't see Mr. Johnson's books. I don't know what his service brings in. But I will tell you just regionally, from what I know about Oklahoma and North Texas, that if he were to lose a call a day, he's losing $110,000 a year just for transport a day. So if it's 2 transports a day, what could that hurt? You're now talking about $250,000 change in revenue in his business. I don't know how many businesses in Enid can afford to lose that kind of revenue where they can't lower their expenses. And you may say, well, if you're running less calls, why can't you lower your expenses? He has the responsibility of answering the 911 calls, which means he has to be ready for the call, not knowing where it is, not knowing when it's coming. We have a saying in our business that we have to be ready for Christmas every day. He has to know that he's ready. 70% of his cost is readiness costs, which means you look at his budget, 70% of the money he spends every year is being ready to run the next call. He will not be able to reduce ambulances or unit hours or personnel if you start carving out a call or 2 a day from him. It's just a strategy that won't work. The other thing that goes on in an industry where you've got a sole provider that has done the job that Life EMS has done in this city is when that phone rings, he responds. There is no questions. He doesn't ask, is this at a part of town where maybe the people can't pay? Is this a customer that we've transported 15 times this month and we've received no money for? He has to go out and pick that patient up. And I will tell you, national averages, I would guess he's close, that for every dollar billed, he's bringing in 40 cents. And he is not standing here in front of you asking you for that other 60. And the reason is, some of it he contractually has to write off, but the rest of it he is able to make work because he has the market allocation to himself. If you start taking that away from him, that goes away. And just briefly, I'll just make one comment about call rotations and allocating calls on a rotating basis. There is no worse strategy. There is only a couple of small systems in America that are doing that. I think both of them are in Mississippi, and I will tell you that everybody who's ever tried that finds that it doesn't work. First of all, your 911 center is now shopping. Who's got the ambulance? Who's closer? And nobody can understaff. You have to staff at full staff, even though you're now losing a third or two-thirds of your calls. It's a bad strategy. In closing, I will just say to you, I don't have a dog in this fight, so I'm going to be blunt. Mr. Mayor, if you had hired me to come advise you on this situation, and I had worked for this council, I would go to your office and I would sit in front of you and the commissioner and I would say, this is a bad idea. Don't do it. Be happy to answer any questions.
David?
Make it absolutely clear that you did not drive up here from Texas at the request of the city council or the city of Enid.
That's correct, I did not.
would assume that you were hired by Life EMS to come up.
I have not been hired by anybody, sir.
Just thought it'd be a good idea to drive
No, I
up
spoke
from
to Jimmy
Texas
Johnson
tell us
about this, and he asked me if I would come up and speak to the council. And I imagine if I sent him an invoice, he'd pay me, but there's been no discussion about payment.
You came at his request then?
I came at his request, yes.
Just want to make it clear.
Where, while we have an expensive consultant for free tonight, what are the market rates on these kind of services? What an ALS non-emergency call? What's the market rate for?
Well, there's a couple of things that you have to understand with ambulance billing. First of all, regardless of what you charge, Medicare, Medicaid, and some commercial payers are only going to pay you so much. And so I will tell you that the rates I've heard quoted for Mr. Miller and for Mr. Johnson appear low to me. I will tell you that I'm close to Fort Worth, for example. Their average bill is $1,800. And they run 13 cities at no subsidy, so they've had to raise that rates to keep that. The cities of that system wanted to make sure that they didn't pay any subsidy. Same with Arlington; those rates are $1,900 a run. ALS, BLS, non-emergency, non-911 doesn't matter. That's what the average is because those cities have chosen we don't want to pay a subsidy, and there's probably room to raise rates here, I would guess, quite frankly. And Mr. Johnson's not done that, but. Again, the further you get away from the major metroplexes, the levels go down, but neither of those rate structures appeared to me as too high.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we have one other individual. I'm not certain that he's signed up for this or any other item because it didn't list it, but Mr. Calgar, Randy Calgar, are you here? You're not here or you're not wishing to speak? I'll take both of those as the case. All righty. That's all we have for that item, Mr. Mayor.
Moving on, item 7, under community development, there are none. Item 8, administration. Item 1 under item 8, approve an agreement with MVG Development, Inc., Denver, Colorado, to reimburse MVG for cost of relocating certain ONG gas lines.
Move approval. Second.
Motion by David, second by Rodney. Further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 2, a resolution authorizing Enid's application to the Oklahoma Water Resource Board for drought grant funding. Stephanie?
Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. I am wanting to submit this application. Morali from Engineering Department has put this together for the Oklahoma Water Resource Board in the amount of $500,000. And it is in the budget currently to do this project without this funding.
Whose budget?
It is in capital improvement.
Our budget or?
The water capital improvement.
The Water Resources Board has that amount of money in their budget for us?
Say that again.
If they approve the grant, Mr. Mayor, which we're applying for, they could award us the entire amount and reimburse us what we have budgeted for this particular project.
Okay, okay.
So we're passing a resolution tonight to go ask for a
Correct.
grant?
Correct.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's an easy one.
Thank you.
Oh, we could.
Good job, Morale. Have a motion by Ben, a second by Tammy. Further discussion. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 3, approve letter of agreement for stormwater development credits with AC Developments LLC, Wacomas, Oklahoma, for improvements to the Rolling Oaks Detention Facility. Right, Robert?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager. This is a letter of agreement for credits for stormwater fees, as said for AC Development. What we have shown on our map here is the location of development. AC is developing about 50 acres at Cleveland and Chestnut, is shown on our map here. And the next slide will show development area. At this point, note that I have the north going to the right, turned it to the side so for better vision. Commissioners, note that we show the commercial development at the corner of Chestnut and Cleveland, and the proposed residential development to the east. And what's shown in gray is the area of a stormwater detention facility that has been excavated by AC Development. The stormwater project will extend further north around the site to the north, outlined as I've outlined here next to Rolling Oaks Drive. This area has been excavated by AC Development as part of their development. They've used it on the soil on site. This is a report prepared by their engineer on the excavation. We've confirmed these numbers. They have moved 103,167 cubic yards of soil. This agreement provides for reimbursing them the anticipated rate for the cost removal of that from the site, which is $2.70. So the letter of agreement provides a credit of $278,555.90, of which $62,294.67 has already been assessed to cover the, I'll go back here just a minute, cover the commercial areas developed just to the south of the site and the first phase of the residential area. And that leaves $216,256.23 of future credit for a developer could use for future developments. Are there any questions?
Where does that basin drain, Robert?
Very good. Mayor, the basin, we have installed a discharge pipe that drains to the, from this basin site, drains south across the commercial site and drains south of Chestnut. That is the natural discharge for that site. So this retention facility basically takes the flow, slows it down to its historical rate and discharges it to the south. Eventually it goes to a 48-inch pipe and goes to Boggy Creek. Commissioner?
Had we put this out for bid to move 103,000 cubic yards of soil, is that rate of 270 per yard, is that what you would have expected to obtain on an open bid process, and how was that arrived at?
This is the rate that the developer acquired for moving the dirty quantity, the soil on the site. Based on our engineer's estimate, we would anticipate it been higher than that. So we think this is a very good price. Moving soil off, and the reason this probably is a good site, if we bid this out, we had to move further, we could have seen a price at $3, $4, $5 a yard. Our engineer's estimate would have been at $4, would have been about $4 a yard. So we felt very good with the
Developer retained the dirt, which he would have also
Right.
had to purchase, so that's not exactly a straight up.
Well, it is, you're right that it's a benefit for both parties. The benefit of developers is they get the soil. They get it at no cost, and all we acquire is a credit for getting the soil removed. So it's a benefit to the developer, it's a benefit to us as the owner, because we get it moved out without doing the money up front. We get the detention up front. Here we got statute of detention in place before the development occurred. We don't have to collect the fee and spend it. And we think we've got it at a much more competitive price. Our estimate would have been $4 to $5 a yard to move that. Matter of fact, I can tell you, we have bids to move the soil, the remaining soil, and it's, yeah, we don't, I think we're up about $7 a yard to move the remainder of the soil that's out there, so I think it's real competitive. Any other questions? It's presented for your approval.
I have a question.
Yes, sir, Mayor.
It says approve a letter of agreement, and the recommendation is to approve a letter of credit. To me,
It's
they're
a
two
letter of
different
agreement that
things.
provides credit for stormwater
Okay.
piece. Yeah, it's a letter of agreement that provides credit. Clarify that.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Ron, second by Ben.
Aaron,
Aaron.
close
Second
enough.
by Aaron.
I'll second it too, sure.
You guys are beginning to look more alike.
Watch out.
You grow your winter coat out a little more.
You have the motion to approve. Hearing no further discussion, please cast your vote. Motion carries
Thank you.
7-0.
Quite
Just,
that much.
just kidding, Aaron. Item 4, consider issuance of
Sure.
ambulance business license for Miller EMS LLC.
Mayor, Commissioners, both ambulance companies have had their opportunity to speak, as have a few members that are in attendance here tonight. If there are any additional questions, we can answer those. And you can either issue the license, deny the license, or you could table it for another time.
I'll make a motion we table it.
Second.
We got way too much information tonight thrown at us by having this on the same night for one thing. We need to table it.
I want to get the ordinance revised first. I mean, I want to get an ordinance in place that provides a minimum set of standards, whether it's taking a model ordinance from another community or national organization or something, or if we have to do something on our own. I want to see a bare set of standards that we can put in place before we change the system at all.
You want to put time limit on it?
I didn't make the motion. Tammy?
I don't know
Roger
how
did.
long it would take us
Month?
to do.
If you don't specify when you table, it comes back in 2
30 days.
weeks.
2
About
weeks.
30 days.
Then I would say at least until the second meeting in January.
Second meeting January sounds
Gives
great.
us
I'll
six-
second that.
6 weeks.
Is that feasible?
Yes, I've already actually started
Doable?
working on the.
Doable may be a better word.
Yeah, I've already started working on the ordinance. I actually sat down with Jimmy Johnson about a week ago, and I got in contact with the Department of Health on Monday, so we've already started.
I'll second Tammy's motion at 6 weeks,
Let's repeat the motion.
I would move that we table this for 6 weeks,
till second meeting of,
till the second meeting of January.
I have a motion by Tammy, second by Ben.
sure.
Further discussion.
I'm going to make a comment on that. I'm not against revising the ordinance at all, but a revised ordinance 4 weeks from now is not going to solve the issue that we have today unless we're going to make the decision that, as a part of that ordinance, that we're going to go with a sole source provider. Because both of these services are going to meet the minimum set of requirements that we're going to come up with. So really all we're doing is stalling 6 weeks. If that's the commission's desires, that's fine. That doesn't solve the problem that's really before us tonight, and we're still going to have to deal with that in 6 weeks with a new ordinance that they both can meet.
Well, David, I don't know that both will meet the same ordinance. I mean, frankly, I'm concerned that if we can provide the same level of service, I also don't want to frankly saddle the citizens of Enid with a cost that's twice as high purely by luck of the draw. If we have one ambulance provider that will provide a higher level service or as high at a lesser price, I want to take that into consideration. Maybe that's, my concern, but I'm a bankruptcy attorney. I see folks all the time who have huge medical bills, and paying twice as much for an ambulance cost purely by random chance offends me a little bit. So I don't know that they will meet both the same set of standards, and I don't know what we need to include in those standards. You may be right. We may just be kicking this down the road, but I want to give us the opportunity to look at those issues. We don't have time to do that tonight.
I don't think I was wanting to delay it because of kicking one out. I think we need to take more time to see a city.
Well, and I
If we
think-
want to, what bothered me about Mr. Johnson's comment, he wants to have a protected area. That bothers me. You know how I would feel about that. I want it to be open to everybody. We maybe need to decide if we want one ambulance service or 2 or 3. I'm not more worried about we get that part that Andrew wants to work out. I'm more want to have an ordinance of figuring out how many ambulance services we want or just one.
Well, my purpose for wanting to table it too is because like Mr. Kennedy said, the ordinance is a train wreck and it needs to be addressed. And I think from our standpoint, I think it's more fair to us as a governing body to have a working ordinance to make a decision off of. So my decision, my motion to table it isn't really about them so much as, and maybe that should be, but my motion to table it is so that we have something more solid and updated to work from, because I think that's more fair to them and us if we're working on something that actually makes sense and that's current. Because like I said, that's completely outdated. It's not even addressing the right things. I mean, so I think that we need to have an ordinance that we can address the current situation more fairly from. And I think that's more fair for everybody involved, them and us.
The motion was to table, correct?
The motion was to table. Did we have some people who wanted to speak on this item?
We have 5 signed up to speak.
So,
Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion carries 5-2. To carry. Item 5, approve amendment to the City of Enid, Oklahoma Retirement Plan.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we presented this to you 2 weeks ago in study session where you had a chance to look at the basic impacts. I want Sonia tonight to speak to specifically the penalty definition, and Sonia, I'll get to that, but I want you to speak to the, because I think I've confused some folks with what that really means. What we're asking you to consider is the opportunity to allow our aging workforce to, by its own inclination, reduce not only its numbers and our personnel costs, and reduce that penalty to them in so doing because of our current rule of 85, which is a combination of age and years worked at the City of Enid. We're proposing that you shift that from 85 to 80 and evaluate over a 3-year period. That will allow us to accomplish 3 basic items. One, our average age being over 50 and the number of employees that are going to be affected by this opportunity will have the privilege of making a decision to leave the City of Enid before their required retirement age of 85. That allows us a considerable cost savings because it reduces the wage amount. An employee working here for 30 years is clearly going to make a lot more money than an employee who is here for 5, and there'll be a corresponding age differential too. I applaud my ASME contemporaries for their cooperation in helping us discuss and disseminate the information and the elements that they've helped us reply from their membership, which gave us the data that we chose to present when we gave you those numbers. A data point on the application on today would capture 67 employees. Now, of that number, 12 are currently in the rule of 85, but the remaining number are what you would capture in just 1 year. Now, the ability to reduce the age of your workforce gives you a more nimble, more responsive, and let's face it, a more efficient workforce. And I count myself in that number. I'm not 45, I'm not 25, and I know my limitations. And I have a lot of contemporaries here on the city staff who are pretty close to my age. We all understand that we have fiscal considerations, be they medical, which is a primary concern of those affected, but secondarily, but just as importantly, is the financial impact of this decision. Should we allow the employees the opportunity to make this decision? Now, I want to stress that we are not designing a RIF. I reject that categorically. We're designing an opportunity for our aging workforce to opt out of the remaining 5 years of their retirement commitment. And the crux of this issue is surrounded by the penalty portion of retiring before the rule of 85. Sonia, please explain that.
Under our current system, the penalty is based off of being age 65 at the time that you leave employment, if you haven't met one of the qualifiers. So if you're a few years short of meeting the rule of 85 and you decide to leave employment, then you have to suffer the penalty as if you were, for every month that prior to age 65 that you're leaving service. So the penalty can be pretty severe for someone who's very close to meeting the retirement rules, but yet is not quite met them. So this rule of 80 simply shortens that period for some of the people who are very close to meeting that but have not yet met it.
Inherent in this is the challenge in meeting the largest piece of angst for our employees, and that is how do we continue and how do they continue to receive medical coverage. I think that we have designed an acceptable compromise, and I seek your endorsement as a council to allow us to change the retirement system so that we can offer this benefit for our employees, and in the process, give the city a reduction in manpower costs, freeing up those dollars for other capital or improvement items, and we also allow those employees the opportunity to retire who have expressed a desire to do so without suffering that penalty.
A motion by Tammy to approve. Second. Second by Aaron. Further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Under item 9, consent.
Move to approve.
Motion by Ben to approve.
Second.
Second by Tammy. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. We'll now recess to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. All the trustees of the Enid Municipal Authority regular meeting are present. The Enid Municipal Authority regular meeting is now in order. Item 1, approval of claims in the amount of $172,375.02.
Move to approve.
Motion by Ben.
Second.
Second by Eric, or Ron. Second by Ron. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. We will now adjourn to convene as the Enid Economic Development Authority. All of the trustees of the Enid Economic Development Authority regular meeting are present. The Enid Economic Development Authority regular meeting is now in session. Item 1, under 15, approval of claims in the amount of $114,494.57.
Move to approve.
Motion by Ben.
Second.
Second by Aaron. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. We'll now adjourn to reconvene as the Enid City Commission. Under item 17, public discussion. There are none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Ben.
Second.
Second by Tammy. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned.
Thank you for joining us for the Enid City Commission meeting. If you have any questions or comments, visit our website at enid.org.